Thursday. I'm Evelyn Jerome Alexander with Magellan College Counseling. I'm based here in Los Angeles. I always say here in Los Angeles as if you're all here right in my living room with me. I'm based in Los Angeles. We have a team of 12 independent college counselors all over the country who work with students and their families to make their college application process more organized and less stressful. I've actually started saying that our job is to stop teens and their moms from killing each other during the fall of the student's senior year. Before we get started, I just want to share who I will be with for the next 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to talk about essays, personal statements, and personal insight questions, and I have 3 fabulous guests. My colleague, Diana Hansen, who has been a college counselor longer than I have, so over 10 years, and who is truly a whiz at helping students work on essays and personal statements, is going to join me in chatting with Kuka Acosta from UC Santa Barbara and Phil Moreno, who is a senior assistant or associate director of admission at Dickinson College, which is a liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. And he happens to be one of those people who are based in California. And my guest tonight and I will talk about that as well. So Kuka and Phil spend a lot of their time reading student essays and personal statements. So that's our next week, that's July 2nd. And then July 9th, I'm so thrilled to be interviewing someone I've known for many, many years, Mark Presnell, who is Executive Director of Northwestern University's Career Advancement Center, i.e. the Career Center, which is truly, truly your best friend when you go visit a college campus. So Mark, I know him because he used to be at Johns Hopkins, and he has truly he did an amazing rehabilitation of the Career Center at Hopkins, and he's done the same at Northwestern, where he's been for a number of years. So that's Thursday, July 9th. And today, I'm so excited to be joined by Gary Bednorz, who is our local California admissions representative from the University of New Mexico. He has a million names for University of New Mexico. Just wait, you are in for a great show tonight. With that said, I'm thrilled to welcome Gary Bednorz with the University of New Mexico. And again, I specifically asked him to join me today to talk about the tuition exchange program that we here on the West Coast refer to as the Western Undergraduate Exchange. So the reason that we call it the WUE, for short, the reason that the WUE is so important is that we've gotten to the point, as I'm sure you all know, where college cost has become one of the primary drivers of this whole entire process. And the WUE was established actually in like 1958 as an agreement between the Western states to keep the kids in the Western states from going east for college. So I'm going to ask Gary to give us a little rundown on what WUE is, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what might be changing this year, if anything, due to COVID, both in WUE and in admissions. So Gary, give us a little overview, if you would.
Well, sure, let me introduce myself, Gary B. And as Evelyn said, I'm with the University of New Mexico, and I started University of New Mexico in 1974 as a student. And recently in one of my presentations, I said I graduated last century, and one of the students asked, 100 years ago? I'm old, not quite that old. So as we start, and I've had 2 jobs since I graduated, and then the question was, did I just graduate? No, again, last century, years ago, I said. So I work with the Office of Admissions, but not at the Office of Admissions. So I am the regional admission counselor. And so I'm going to explain a couple things. Admissions, why Evelyn said the Career Center is your best friend, I think the admissions office is your top best friend. And that because until you get admitted, you can't go, entiendo? And here's how you get admitted. Ask questions, follow directions. So, and who do you ask questions to? The admission counselor. Look, we work for the Office of Admissions. We don't work for the Office of Rejection. We want to help you get admitted. Right. Every college has an admission counselor that calls on your area. You could be anywhere in the world, and there's somebody within admissions office that's responsible for you, for your high school, for your family. Like I take responsibility for all the students in California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington. And one of the nice things is tonight I've got a very short drive home where typically I'm exactly. There's going to be some fun tonight. I always, what Evelyn said was she's here to help take the stress out of the process. I always say tonight, let's see if we can go from stress to success. Let's have some fun. There's no reason this should be stressful. I think going to college is fun. As I said, I'm still working for my alma mater. And so we're going to talk about the WUI and what's going on with the Western Undergraduate Exchange and basically how that works and what it is. It can be a very confusing program. So parents, students, families, as you're thinking about going to college, one of the things that Evelyn stated was cost gets to be one of the deciding factors now. Well, it's always been one of the deciding factors, but it's not the only factor. If a school was free and didn't have the majors that you wanted, would you go? I would hope not. So cost is certainly important. Location comes into play, the size of a school and getting admitted. You can't go if you don't get admitted, as we said earlier. But let's back up and talk about what cost is, because people hear the cost of going to college and right away, every student, every parent, everyone always says, okay, what's the tuition? Well, believe it or not, tuition's not the entire cost. It's one of the costs. Yep. One of the things I always say is ask COA. COA stands for cost of attendance. And here's the question. As I said earlier, ask questions, follow directions. So tonight, parents, students, take down some notes, and here's some great, I'm going to tell you all, not every question to ask, but many. So here's the question. You're talking to an admission counselor. What's the COA? How much am I going to pay? Okay, that's what you say. It's me, I like to rhyme all the time. They say, I don't know. We'll find out. So ask the COA. Now, there's tuition. Another cost is fees. So tuition and fees, those are usually lumped together. And when you ask a college, they'll tell you the tuition and fees for a year, an annual. But is a college on the quarter system or on the semester system? Because parents, you end up breaking it into those components. If it's the semester program, there's 2 semesters. So let's say tuition is $10,000. It's $5,000 for the fall and $5,000 for the spring. You're not paying $10,000 all at once. And so I'm going to explain a little bit more. Another big cost is housing and dining. I know when I went to college, it was called room and board, but college administrators said, no, that sounds too much like prison, so we're going to make it very nice and call it housing, dining, residential life. And it's going to be so glamorous. I have seen some of the apartments, well, at the University of New Mexico, have apartment complex, 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom with a kitchen, a dining room, a living room, washer dryer in the unit, and they run about $600 a month per student.
I toured those apartments. Those are beautiful apartments.
Yeah. And so you've got tuition and fees, housing and dining, and books and supplies. And supplies includes your laptops, your mobile phones, e-books, and e doesn't mean expensive, but today that's the way. E means efficient, quite honestly. Why are textbooks so expensive? Because you know how many to print, they print too many, and there's students buying them. So I think just the way of the world, things will go e-books for efficiency. Another big cost is transportation. The first 3 costs that I mentioned, tuition and fees, housing and dining, books, those are somewhat fixed cost. Books, there's a little variation, but parents, students figure about $1,000 a year, taking 10 classes per year, about $100 per book, per class. So that's a good number. Housing and dining, again, it depends on where you're living and what that can be like. And tuition, I'm going to back up just a little bit further because people always ask tuition and think that there's always in-state and out-of-state. Right. Public schools do have a residential rate if you're a resident of that state and a non-resident. Private schools, there's no in-state, out-of-state difference. And so a good question to ask is, are you public or private to any college? If it's private, no matter where they're located, there's no in-state, out-of-state difference, no resident versus non-resident. And so that can sometimes be how will you know if a college is public? Well, certainly ask, but if it says Boise State, California State, Arizona State, it has state in the name, that's a state university. So that's one of the factors that can help. If it says University of and has the state's name, University of New Mexico, University of Arizona, University of California, University of Pennsylvania,
right.
That.
Right.
So I like to throw that one in because someone usually catches me. But click on name any school right behind you. You've got Louisiana State University.
Perfect.
Okay, so you see Louisiana State, states in the name. And then you see Georgia Tech.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
And, public.
Are you sure?
It is. Well, I'm sure, but if I were a family, I might not be.
Right. And then you see something.
And perfect example, Georgia Institute of Technology is public, but the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is not.
And again, if you ask, you see now University of Indiana. Again, right. University of and a state's name.
Right.
You're thinking public. And what's the difference, public and private? Well, public schools do have residential rate for the residents of that state, non-residential rate. And so keep that in mind because that's going to play when we start explaining just
and usually the difference between in-state and out-of-state generally is out-of-state is about 3 times what the in-state tuition is. I mean, housing and dining are the same for everybody, but the tuition part usually 3 times in-state for the out-of-state kids.
And books and supplies, there's no in-state, out-of-state.
For sure, yeah.
Transportation. Yeah, transportation that can cost a little bit more if you're out of state and traveling, but again, there's still transportation no matter where you go to college. When I went to college, parking wasn't free. I thought it was, but all those tickets that I kept throwing in my glove box told me otherwise. So definitely you've got parking no matter where you go. So check in on that. And talk about college and talk about transportation. I say, what's the closest airport? So those are great questions to ask. And then last, flexible. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Talk about transportation for a minute, because sometimes I get pushback from parents on this. I think people think that transportation costs are much higher than they actually are. And I think they think that because, you know, when you first take your son or daughter to school, you're going to bring younger brother and younger sister, and maybe older brother is going to join us too, and mom and dad, and you're all going to stay in a hotel, and there's 5 of you plus the kid going to college, and that's 2 hotel rooms, and you're going to hang out for a couple days, and that's an expensive trip. But you're not going to do that same trip like 5 times over the course of the year, right? You're going to send the kid, and you know, you'll buy a couple round trips for kiddo, but you're not going to do that big expensive trip, you know, 5 times in a year. It's probably not going to add up to 10 grand. It depends, of course, on, you know, hotel costs. If you're talking about Boston, whole other situation. But I think that people think it's, you know, add $10,000 onto the tuition, and I think it's not that much.
Yeah, and again, those are controlled by the family, not by the university.
Right.
The university will set the parking, but parking's a couple $100 a semester.
Right.
Do I need a car? It depends on where you're at and public transportation. At the University of New Mexico, a student would be fine without a car.
Sure, yeah.
Car. A lot of students are local, so there's students that do have cars and share. So think about that. And, you know, as Evelyn said, when you fly can make a difference too.
Sure.
If you try and buy a ticket 2 days before Thanksgiving because the little darling has to fly home all of a sudden, that's not the time to buy the ticket. The time to buy was in August and plan.
Yeah.
And I can tell you honestly, this fall, many colleges are wrapping up the fall semester at Thanksgiving. So it's a one-way ticket home.
Buy the ticket now.
At home for 2 months. Doesn't mean school's finished. University of New Mexico will finish our classes about November 20th. far as on campus, then the week after Thanksgiving, what we're going to do is do a study week and then finals after that.
Yep.
We typically shut down for 5 weeks. So we are on the semester program.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of schools doing that. So that's a really great tip is, they're going to tell you what the academic calendar is before the beginning of the year. So you can buy all your tickets early.
Yeah. And buy those tickets. Look, Tuesday's the best time to buy airplane tickets.
Right.
What? And just another side tip.
Yep.
And then the last big cost is what we call personal expenses. JJ and SB, Jamba Juice, Starbucks, pizza, popcorn, all that fun. I mean, at University of New Mexico, we'll give students free tickets to go to basketball. We're not buying them sodas and popcorn. That's on you, or the pizza after the fun, after the victory. So those are the 5 costs. So keep that in mind, and that's the COA.
Yeah.
Am I going deep dive into the COA? Because we're going to talk about the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, yep. WUE. And so WUE simply is tuition reduction. It won't affect housing and dining. It doesn't have anything to do with the books, doesn't have anything to do with the Jamba Juice.
Yep.
What it does is reduce tuition
yep.
for non-residents. Well, so I can't get WUE if in my home state? No, if you're in your home state, if you're going to a public school,
yeah.
you pay the residential rate. That's a good deal. If I lived in New Mexico, tuition would be about $8,000 a year.
Wow.
Lateral to almost what a Cal State would be because I'm in California,
yep.
right? We're a different tier. We're more like Berkeley and UCLA as opposed to some of this. Now, there are top tier state schools in California and throughout. I mean, you hear University of Michigan and Michigan State. Michigan State will tell you they're the big dog. They'll arm wrestle for that all day long. But what you want to do is maybe ask who's the flagship in your state.
Sure. Yeah.
The top tier research center, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
Back to tuition. If you live in a state and you're going to a public school, you're going to pay residential. If you go out of state to a public school, there's resident and non-resident. 15 states in the West have formed a coalition. As Evelyn said, this started 4 decades ago, and I kiddingly say, so it's a brand new program. People didn't take advantage of it as much.
Yeah.
Tuition was lower. Today, well, a non-resident at the University of New Mexico, tuition and fees is about $24,000 a year. What's the residential rate? 8,000.
Yep.
8 times 3?
About 3 times.
Go. So use Evelyn's factor of times 3. Yeah. And you'll say, wow. Now, see here, it's 24,000. What the WUE will do at public schools in the West is bring the tuition back down to either lateral, which means equal to residential rate,
yep.
or fairly close. Typically, the most a student will pay is 1.5 times the residential rate.
Right.
And again, so let's say the residential rate's 8,000. Then the WUE tuition would be about 12,000.
Yep.
That's a great deal.
That's a great deal.
There are other scholarships that you can stack on top of that.
Can you just stop for a minute though? So, and we actually have people watching who aren't necessarily in the West, so we will talk about some tuition exchange programs in other places. But just sticking with this New Mexico example, if the WUE rate is 12,000 for out-of-state kids, plus room and board is going to add another 10.
Yep.
Housing and dining. So call it 24, just to be, give it a little buffer. 24, add another 3 for travel, add another $1,000 for books. We're at 27, 28. So we're basically what you're going to pay for a Cal State. We are still below what you would pay for a UC. This is kind of important.
And that's the starting point.
Right.
For a student with a higher GPA, instead of paying $12,000 the WUE tuition, you get another 4. You actually get to be a resident of the state of New Mexico for tuition purposes. So now you're back another $3,000, $4,000 off of that. So we're talking tuition and fees, housing and dining, books, transportation.
Yep.
5,000 for the year,
Yep.
at
So
a flagship top tier R1.
Yeah, we've got somebody asking a question, which is a really, really common question, which is, does the WUI tuition exchange program apply to highly impacted majors like engineering and business?
We're going to get into that, but I'm going to say
in all of college counseling. You ready?
At University of New Mexico, absolutely, the WUI does. But there's 86 public schools, four-year universities in the West.
Yep.
And here's the tough part. Every school uses the WUI program to funnel students to them into certain programs.
So differently is what you mean.
It's different. Yeah. So you have to check with each admission counselor at each college.
Yep.
And it can change from year to year.
Yep.
On any school, but I was born in Tucson, home of the University of Arizona. Got the WUI program for one major.
Right.
Engineering.
Right.
Mining was a big deal in the 50s and earlier in 1950s. In Arizona, my dad grew up in Bisbee, which is big in copper mining, not far from Tucson, and there's other silver mining. So mining engineering is still a huge component, and the University of Arizona wants to keep that program alive. How do you keep the program alive? Get more students into that program.
Right. This is the way I think about the WUI. The WUI is, it's a kindness and a courtesy that the states are giving each other, but really the intent is to bring Western state kids to each of these public universities. Some of them need it more than others, right? So the University of Arizona, bottom line, does not have to incentivize California kids to go there. Neither does Arizona State. So very similar, there's only a very small handful of majors and not at the Tempe campus who for Arizona State that qualify for the WUI. So same thing with University of Oregon, doesn't have to incentivize California students. Oregon State, on the other hand, has, well, interesting, they didn't used to technically do WUI, but they had specific scholarships for California kids. But I don't know if you've heard John Bockenstedt recently, he actually said this year that Oregon State was joining WUI. So really think of it as Gary said, the word you used was funnel. And that's really what these colleges that participate are trying to do. They're trying to incentivize students from neighboring states to funnel themselves towards, each of their schools.
I've always called the WUI the good neighbor policy.
Totally.
States say, hey, California students, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, we've got programs, we're a great school, we want you. But there's 86 public schools. And you have to check, as Evelyn said, University of Oregon, they used to have WUI for music majors. Now they don't need more music majors. Everybody knows the University of Oregon mascots, the Ducks. And I always say people are flocking to Oregon, so they don't need to offer a tuition discount.
Yeah.
So now there's not as many eager beavers as there used to be. So Oregon State says we need more students.
Right.
And so they will, again, use that program to their benefit. But the benefit is to families because you're paying less to go out of state.
Yep.
You get a great education at a top tier university.
Yeah.
These are public schools in the West. And talk about transportation.
Yeah.
If you live in California, it's a quick flight to many places.
Yep.
Whether it's Albuquerque or Boise, Idaho, or going. So.
Yeah, we're talking frequent flyer miles on Southwest.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about tuition exchanges in other parts of the country?
Sure.
Great.
I'm going to throw New Mexico into the mix. Why the University of New Mexico is in the West, in New Mexico, and we're part of the WUI. We also have a program called the Lobo Undergraduate Exchange, the LUI, which means any student in any state will actually be benefiting. If you're in the West, you would get the WUI program, but let's say you lived in Chicago or Boston, you want to come to New Mexico, you've had your fill of ice cold weather. It doesn't in New Mexico, we'll talk about that in a minute. But you would qualify for the same program, different name. But no, I live in Chicago and I want to stay close to home. Well, there's a program called the Midwest Student Exchange, MSE. So basically it's a reciprocity for neighbors. So check with the neighboring states.
Yeah.
Look, in the West, it's 15 states. Program for the East. There's a program for the South. So 4 or 5 programs. And what I'll do, Evelyn, is I'll make sure I'll send you the master link.
That'd be great.
You can share that with your family.
Yeah, we'll put the link right under this video.
Yeah, and so you can see, depends on where you live, neighboring states.
Yeah.
What colleges have learned over the course of 131 years of New Mexico doing business, that students like to stay somewhat close to home.
Yeah.
And that is about a 2-hour plane flight, or maybe about a 1-day drive. What's a 1-day drive? 10 to 11 hours. So on where you live, you can get to Albuquerque from LA in about 11 hours.
Okay. I mean, to me, this is, you know, when parents come to us and say, we really want to stay in California because it's cheaper. You know, this, I know, that's kind of the reaction we have. You know, that's when we say, like, let's really talk about what the costs will be. Because there are some really, really, you know, good neighbor, generous colleges that are really trying to help California kids. And here's an interesting fact that I think California families don't think about a lot. We have 500,000 graduating high school seniors in California every year. In our 9 campus University of California system, right, 9 undergraduate campuses, 23 campuses in the Cal State system, there's 200,000 seats in the entire freshman class across both of those systems. We have 500,000 graduating seniors and only 200,000 seats in our UC and Cal State systems combined. They could go to community college and they could, you know, go through that path to transfer to a UC or Cal State. Or I always say, if you're ready to start at a 4-year university, there is in the United States that will admit you. And there's many of them that will make it affordable for you.
And if you look at an out-of-state WUI school and it's lateral in cost to a Cal State, another part of the equation is out the door in 4, you score. If I'm at a school and I can't get a class or I can't graduate, and I'm not saying it's impossible. I've had lots of friends and their students, and even them, they're 4 years. If you change your major at any school, that cause an issue. I have a student this year, Evelyn, this is just crazy. She's from Palm Desert. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing in 3 years from the University of New Mexico because of the AP credit that she had.
Right.
3 years, she's going to be making more money than me next year. Again, she's going into nursing, but so.
Well, and this is another, I think, thing that holds at least California families back from leaving the state. They think that everyone's heard of the Cal States, everyone's heard of the UCs. Obviously no one's heard of the University of New Mexico, right? Flagship, tier 1, whatever, no one's heard of it. And clearly there's no way you'll ever get a job graduating from UNM. And honestly, this is something that I will talk with Mark about in a couple weeks, but, you know, give us a little bit about your outcomes. And you know, I have Gary here tonight. You know, outcomes are really the intentional product of why you are sending your child to college, right? Yes, it's for the college experience, but in the end, you're trying to evict your child from your house and get them off the payroll, right? And get them set up so that they can one day support you. And I think that this is a really important piece of the puzzle to talk to college reps about. And in fact, this is a nice transition. So you'll talk about outcomes, but we wanted to help people understand, when I do encounter someone like you, Gary, a college admissions rep, what am I supposed to ask you?
One of the first questions, to get any scholarship or any WUI program, you have to get admitted. So find out what's the admission process.
Right.
At the University of New Mexico, it's fairly straightforward. Juniors, guess what? Class of 2021, you are now seniors. And we do rolling admission. And I always say this summer, get rolling on some applications. I'll pay your application fee. So find out, what does it take to get admitted? Okay, guess what? At the University of New Mexico, we truly believe that a student that has built a strong foundation in high school by doing the rigor of the coursework, did college prep coursework, your English, your math, your social science, and got good grades, 3.0. Look, that's not perfect, but 3.0 means a student's getting good grades.
Right.
A is great, C is average, B is good.
He's good.
3.0, there's dough to help you go to New Mexico. So every college will tell you what it takes to get admitted, and then also what it takes to keep those scholarship. Is there a GPA requirement to get the scholarship? Is there an SAT or ACT? And that was one of the things that Evelyn opened up with. What are colleges going to do in light of the COVID and the ACT, SAT challenge? Students, you may have heard that this week the ACT announced more test dates this fall. They need more students to take the test. You're their customers. But guess who their customers are? Colleges.
Right.
And so will colleges do away with the ACT or the SAT? You may have even heard in your home state, if you live in California, oh, it's not needed.
Right.
Needed is a question. Just as, even the ones that say test optional,
Yeah.
what I like to say is test flexible.
Right.
You're a good test taker and do well. And what's a good test? Each college will tell you.
That's right.
University of New Mexico, if a student got a 22 on the ACT or an 1100 on the SAT,
yeah,
they would pay the same as a resident of New Mexico.
Wow. That's
it's
22
almost a $16,000 a year discount.
Yeah.
It's 4 years.
Yep. That's a heck of a discount.
Yeah. And so, and it renews. So, you know, if a college requires an essay, great, do the essay.
Yeah.
It's not required at New Mexico. Letters of recommendation, not required. Would we take one? It can make a difference. I had a student that was borderline, and we got 3 letters of recommendation about some challenges that student had and overcome. And so we definitely, even colleges that use the evaluative method, if you will, the transcript, the test scores, those sort of things, we are people admitting people. We're admission counselors,
right,
and students, working with students and family.
Yeah.
And so I hope you get that. It's your admissions office and admission counselor that's going to help you throughout getting admitted and get scholarship.
right.
So I'm going to talk just about one other thing that sometimes gets overlooked in that scholarship look. It's the departmental scholarships.
Yeah, definitely.
We all know the athletic department has lots of scholarship. False. There are almost as many students playing a sport, non-scholarship,
Right.
as there are, and there are.
And there's more merit scholarships available than athletic scholarships. I mean, I was just talking to someone the other day about this. You know, so many parents have spent hours and hours for decades on the sideline of their kids playing lacrosse and soccer and volleyball, whatever. And they've invested thousands of dollars and, you know, weekends and, you know, family vacations into schlepping the kids around to the tournaments. And they're kind of crossing their fingers, hoping it's going to come back as an athletic scholarship. The truth is, you get more scholarships for good grades and good test scores than you do for playing a sport.
Merit scholarship could be good grades, good test scores. But what I always say merit is simply talent.
Yeah.
A math scholarship to go to the University of New Mexico. I wish I was a better public speaker to help me with this job. Whatever you're good at, colleges say, tell us. If you're good at music, if you're good at biology,
yep.
There's students, guess what? There's an election coming up in the near future. So students are going to be working in the poli-sci department doing predicting and forecasting. So
yep.
there's money to be made, research opportunities.
Yep.
So
again, we talked with Melissa Falk from Muhlenberg about this last week. What should we be doing to connect? You know, you can't connect with students the way you're used to connecting with them. Students aren't hearing and aren't connecting in person with the college reps the way they're used to doing so. And so how can students connect with someone like you, and what should they be asking when they do connect?
Sure. I'm going to throw out that, again, I'm a regional admission counselor living in California. There's 180 regional out-of-state reps, if you will, all based in California.
Yeah.
Why? 500,000 high school seniors in California, a plethora of students, limited 23 Cal States, 9 UCs, 32 schools, 500,000 students. Hello. Welcome to New Mexico. And we love you. But it's not just us. There's 120 out-of-state schools that have representatives. Some cover Northern California, but go to this website, regionaladmissions.com. And one way to connect is through the email.
And actually, you know, we're based in California, but there are regional admission groups all over the country. And I'll tell you something, the large organization that governs all of those is called NARAC, National Association of Regional Admission Counselors, and their website is narac.net.
Don't
make the .org mistake. I do it all the time. narac.net. And what you can do is you literally just click on the link on that page that says regional groups, and you scroll down. There's one in Austin, there's one in Oregon and Washington, there's one in Chicago, Charlotte, Dallas, Fort Worth, El Paso, Florida, Atlanta, Houston, they're all over the country. And this is really the best way. I'm not kidding. The one in Ohio, including Northern Kentucky, is called OINK. Ohio, including Northern Kentucky. Get it? Californians don't know that Ohio and Kentucky are close to each other. Yeah, they're all over the place. There's definitely one in St. Louis, Twin Cities, Detroit, Long Island. This is a great, and again, Gary, tell us more about what you do in RAC and what other regional groups like in NARAC do.
So yeah, our job as regional admission counselors is one, to get to know our territory, our schools, our students, and make that connection so it's seamless when you start to look at a college. So we know our schools. Sure, I'm an alum of the University of New Mexico.
Yeah.
There are many college admission counselors that aren't alum. That doesn't mean they don't know their school, they don't know their programs. They've made that connection with their college, their campus.
Yeah.
They're not hucksters, they're admission counselors.
Yeah.
They're to help you find that fit.
Yep.
And I'm going to talk about fit for just one split second. As I always say, fit is an acronym for finding it or filling it. So in that finding it, filling it, we're looking for an academic fit, a social fit, and that financial fit.
Yep.
A lot of time talking about financial fit tonight.
Yep.
And bringing the cost of tuition down at
Yep.
any public schools in the West or anywhere. I mean, that good neighbor policy depends on where you live. Find a neighboring state, reach out to them and say, hey, I'm interested. So again, fit, academic. Look, students, if you've built a strong academic foundation, then colleges say, we're ready, you're ready. And it's a two-way street because the college has to have your major. And check with the admissions office. Sometimes you don't see that specific major, but maybe it's couched in another way. Social fit. I always talk about clubs and organizations and that fun thing. And that's part of going to college. Parents, you had fun if you went to college. I know you did. I did. I'm still having fun. And getting to know the area. New Mexico, there's a ski resort 20 minutes from the University of New Mexico. Who knew, right? So absolutely options both in the classroom and out the classroom for that social fun. And then the financial fit, yep. Tuition fees, housing, all that combined. I'd say don't get saddled with a ton of debt. It's not a good way to start at 22 years old owing a ton of dough.
Right. I think that RAC and the regional admission groups I think it's a different way of being a good neighbor. And the way I say it to families is I think it's the University of New Mexico investing in California students. Like they've, paid for you to spend 100% of your time getting to know the high schools, getting to know the students here, and those other 120 colleges, same thing. They recognize that California is graduating more high school students, and everywhere there's a regional group, there's a college there because that's where their students are coming from. So if I were a parent in the Dallas area and I didn't, want to send my kid to UT or SMU or TCU, I would reach out. They happen to be called DARN, Dallas Area Regional Network. I just think that's cute, but I would reach out to that, I would take a look at that website and look at the membership directory. It's not behind any paywalls or, behind any passwords. You can look on the regional admissions website and look up Gary, although he's been kind enough to give us his email address right here under his name. It's garyb@unm.edu. And he'll get back to you fast and probably with a rhyme. But I really do see it as colleges investing in regional areas other than their home.
Colleges need more students, and students need colleges. There's just not enough college-educated population in the world right now for the upcoming jobs. Look, we all did a pivot in March. Can't really say what the next pivot will be or when, but who's going to solve the mystery? It's going to be college-educated professors, students. So again, colleges are working on a vaccine. University of New Mexico has a hospital, and guess one of the things we're working on, the vaccine. We're not the ones, we're just part of.
Yeah. So why don't you give us just a couple tidbits of information about UNM. I visited a number of years ago. You've got really amazing engineering facilities, some top-notch programs. So give us a couple tidbits about UNM.
Well, sure. As I said to start with, that I went to the University of New Mexico and I graduated from the University of New Mexico, or as we always say, UNM. And then I always ask people, what do you know about UNM? And I always hear, Evelyn, unfortunately, not much. So let's look at the location. Unless you live in New Mexico, UNM means University Not Close to Mom. You're leaving home and going away to college. We're located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I know you hear Albuquerque and right away you start thinking, the desert, flat and hot. We're not. I want you to think UNM, University Next to Mountains. We're actually the same elevation as Denver. So we're more like Denver than we are Phoenix, Tucson, etc. And I always say we were the original mile-high city, UNM, University nearly a mile high. Yes, there's snow, but not a whole lot. UNM means usually not much, just a little bit in the city, but a lot at the ski resort.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the majors, and I tell you, UNM, you name a major, we probably have it. There's 200 different majors. And so, yeah, we're known for our engineering. And I always say UNM, University for Nuclear, Mechanical, Computer Science. Computer science, computer encryption was developed at the University of New Mexico in 1988. So, and again, we're top tier. In business school, you talked about outcomes. 98% of our MBAs had a job within 90 days.
Whoa.
We always say, graduate in May, have a job in 90 days. So it's a great way for people to know that, one, you're not just going to school, you're getting a job. So some of the other areas, if you're into any kind of the health sciences, and that's a broad spectrum, I always say UNM, University for Nursing and Medicine. The largest hospital in the state is on the University of New Mexico campus.
Yep.
It's quicker to walk to it than drive to it. Students I know are looking for nursing today.
Yeah.
It can be direct entry. Students with good grades and ACT, SAT. And again, we're going to be flexible with the COVID challenge.
Yeah.
We need more students, and especially into those fields. But direct entry pharmacy.
Wow.
First year, you're doing gen ed, and 6 years, you're in the pharmacy school.
Yep.
A doctor in physical therapy. Athletic training is changing. Schools are, in the future, there won't be a bachelor in athletic training. It'll be all masters. You'll get a bachelor's in exercise science. And in the fine arts, New Mexico is known for its film, and Netflix purchased Albuquerque Studios.
Wow.
And they've guaranteed to spend $1 billion over the next 10 years. Would anybody, a company move into an area? Because of the talent coming out of a university. And I always say UNM, University for Netflix movies. You want to get into that industry? Perfect fit. Music, UNM, University Now for Music, the largest performing arts center in the state. If you want teacher. You can get your credential in New Mexico and teach in California and get, so there's option. And sometimes students don't know what they want to study.
Right.
200 majors, look, I always say UNM, undecided, no more. Come explore. We'll open the door. Options galore. We've got what you're looking for. Well, there's something for everybody. Can you come undecided? Absolutely. Housing? Oh, man. Today, as I said, UNM, University Nice is a Marriott. Sorry, I got again, they're one of my sponsors. No. Dining 24/7, UNM, unlimited number of meals. I mean, you talk about the freshman 15, I'd had the freshman 40 if I was going to college there. And so, but housing and dining is about $10,000 a year. And tuition, if you qualify for the WUI, the WUI Plus, again, a 3.0 student's going to qualify for tuition discount. So before tuition discount, it's about $35K. How you're going to pay, that's what you say. UNM, you need money, 3.0, we've got dough to help you go to New Mexico. And the nice thing is that we do rolling admission. That means you're admitted, not committed. Students could apply this summer. Send me an email. I'll walk you through the process. It takes less than a half hour to apply. Get us your transcript. If you've taken the ACT or SAT, that's going to benefit you. If you haven't, we still will review you. And I'll pay the app. There's no essay, no personal statement, no letters of recommendation. And as I said before, class of 2021, your seniors now, you're done. So this, seniors can apply now. I'll tell you how. Do it at home, use your phone. Either way, do it today. Then email me, Gary B. I'll waive the fee. It's free. With a 3.0, I'll help you get dough to go to New Mexico. Don't be a fool. Stay in school. It's cool. Go to college. Get the knowledge. Gary B. Remember me when you're making that list. UNM, University, not to be missed. How was that? You said I could throw in a rhyme or two.
You guys can understand why I invited Gary B to join me today, right? He knows everything there is to know about WUI, and he's wildly entertaining. Yes, I've heard many of those rhymes before. They're still funny for some reason. If anyone has any questions, let's see, we have one question, which is unfortunately not for Gary. So the question is, would you recommend students not take the SAT essay this year? And I'm going to give you a big resounding yes. I would recommend that they not take the essay. 6 months ago, the answer would have been no, because the UCs were at the time still requiring the essay, and at the time still requiring the SAT, which now they aren't. So yay, no SAT essays. There are still, for most colleges, essays as part of the college application, as Gary said. No essays for UNM, no essays for the Cal States either. No essays for the UCs, and we will talk more about this next week. They don't like us to call them essays, they call them personal insight questions. Yeah, you'll watch Kuka like snap my head off if I call it an essay. I love you, Kuka. So no, they don't have to take the essay. As Gary said, the ACT did announce 5 new sitting dates for the ACT this fall in September and October. They're still planning on the July SAT. The June SAT did happen in some states, not many, but some. We are still assuming that the SAT will happen in August. We have not had a cancellation yet. And SAT also added a September date. So if all goes the way it's planned, we've got ACT in July, and then again in September multiple times, and then in October multiple times, and the SAT in August, and in September, and in October, and in November. So lots of opportunities coming up, but as Gary said, lots and lots of colleges completely waiving, or like you said, test flexible, which is to say, if you take the SAT or ACT and you do well, it is certainly not going to hurt you to submit your scores. Generally, our whole team is talking with tons of college reps, these days, and what we're hearing is if your score is, in the middle of their middle 50% range or towards the top of it, you should submit. And if it's below, then you probably shouldn't. Usually you can see what that middle 50% range is, so you can tell if you're in the range or not. But I know that that the SAT and ACT are really stressful. So honestly, what I've been doing with my clients, and I think many of us counselors have been doing, is we're kind of finalizing the list and we're seeing, do I really need to take that SAT or ACT, or do I need to take it again? Because if I don't need to take it again, I kind of have a lot of freedom this summer that I wasn't expecting to have. And so my challenge to students then, if you do have some freedom, is you need to do something with it. You need to fill that time somehow. Right? What do you look like you had something to say, Gary?
No, I got that question. I did a presentation the other day, and at the end, a student, I said, what should students be doing this?
Yeah.
I mean, we're typically able to do things, and this summer is different.
Yep.
One of my strong go-to is always read.
Read, absolutely.
Because when you go to college, you are going to read.
That's right.
Ever dreamt.
Yep.
And if you end up taking the ACT or SAT,
yep.
one of the strong test components is how fast can you read, comprehend, answer questions. So the more you read, the better your vocabulary, the stronger ACT, SAT, but just in general,
yep.
the more knowledge. So read. And then I also said to the students, you would not believe how smart you are in a lot of ways, and put that skill to work. And by that, I mean, right now, you probably love to see your grandma, and she'd love to see you. Why not reach out and say, Grandma, let's see if we can get you going on the Zoom.
Yeah.
Help, or call a senior center and say, hey, do you have people there? So use your smarts, really productive, out of the box thinking. Just imagine if you had to write an essay. What'd you do during the COVID-19 summer?
Yep.
Wrote that you reached out to a senior center, helped them set up a Zoom. And so the students, I mean, if you said that, oh man, that was pretty bright. So use your time this summer and be creative in a positive way.
Well, and that goes back to, I feel like this is a really recurring theme. You know, you are a human. You are a human in an admission office admitting humans to your community. And if a student can really present themselves not just as a robot and a bunch of numbers and a really smart kiddo, if you present yourself as a human and really talk about what you're doing, you know, even if it's a very small microcosm, but how you are being human in the world, the humans who read your essays and your application file will like you. And you know, who do college admission officers admit? They admit people they like.
Yeah, not one college admits numbers.
Right.
We admit people.
Right.
So get to know us. We want to get to know you.
Yeah.
Reach out to me, to Gary B. or Evelyn or any admission counselor. Send an email. We're not big, scary people. I know some people think it's scary, Gary.
Well, I'm big and scary.
Yeah.
I'm 5 feet tall, for those of you who don't know me in person. So I hope that helps. I think that's a really great way to end. So Gary, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you for making this your Thursday.
Thank you guys for making time, and thank you, Evelyn, for hosting.
Thank you. We're going to do this 5 more times. I've got great interview subjects lined up right through the end of July, and I just added one more at the very end. So July 30th. I'm so excited to be doing this. I actually have 2 former clients. I'm trying to invite one more, 2 and hopefully 3 former clients, college students, and one of them about to be a college student, who are going to come talk to you about their feelings throughout the process, which, you know, as a parent, you should know, really, really stressful. So I wanted you to hear from students themselves. But we'll be back next Thursday. We're going to be talking about essays and personal statements. And I hope you'll join us again at 5:30 Pacific time on Thursday. We will see you then.